There is an idea living quietly inside you, and it does not want you to succeed. It smiles when you hesitate. It whispers when you almost change. It tightens its grip the moment your life begins to improve. And the most disturbing part is this: you don't resist it. You protect it. You defend it as if it were your last possession in a collapsing world. Because somewhere, in a place you rarely dare to look, you have mistaken it for yourself. You believe that what destroys you is also what defines you. This is the dangerous idea, and it is already shaping your life. You see it in small moments, almost invisible. You say you want to wake up earlier, but when the alarm rings, something inside you resists with quiet defiance. Not laziness, no. It feels deeper than that, almost principled, as if getting up would betray something essential within you. You say you want love, but when it comes close, too close, you pull away. You overthink, you doubt, you find flaws where there were none before, and afterwards you call it intuition or self-respect or needing space. But if you are honest, painfully honest, you know it felt like something else, like sabotage, like relief disguised as loss. There is a strange satisfaction in watching things fall apart, especially when you are the one pulling the strings. You tell yourself you don't understand why you do it, but part of you does. That part has always known. Dostoevsky once wrote of a man who rejected everything that could make his life better. Not because he didn't understand what was good, but because he understood it too well. Logic, progress, happiness, all of it felt like a prison to him. He wanted something else, something irrational, something that proved he was free. And so he chose suffering. Not accidentally, not blindly, deliberately. Because to him, the greatest proof of freedom was the ability to act against his own best interests. And if you listen closely, you will hear that same voice inside you. It doesn't speak loudly. It doesn't need to. It simply asks a question that logic cannot answer. What if I don't want what's good for me? You dismiss it at first. Of course you want what's good for you. Everyone does. That's what you've been taught. That's what makes sense. But then your actions betray you. You procrastinate when the stakes are high. You withdraw when someone genuinely cares. You choose the familiar pain over the uncertain possibility of something better. And suddenly, the question becomes harder to ignore. Because your life begins to look like evidence against your own intentions. You say you want peace, but you create chaos. You say you want connection, but you build distance. You say you want change, but you repeat the same patterns with almost mathematical precision. And the most unsettling realization creeps in slowly. You are not failing by accident. You are participating. There is a moment, subtle but undeniable, where you choose. It doesn't feel like a choice in the traditional sense. There is no clear decision, no conscious declaration. It feels more like a quiet surrender. Like letting go of the better path, just slightly, just enough, and then watching yourself drift. Why? Why would anyone do this? Why would you? Dostoevsky understood something most people spend their lives avoiding. Human beings are not driven purely by happiness. We are driven by meaning. And sometimes, meaning hides in the very things that hurt us. Pain can feel real in a way that comfort does not. Struggle can feel alive in a way that stability never quite achieves. And so, unconsciously, you begin to associate suffering with depth, with identity, with truth. You tell yourself, this is just who I am. But what if that sentence is the most dangerous lie you've ever believed?
Because once you define yourself by your wounds, you start protecting them. You stop asking how to heal and start asking how to preserve.
You begin to reject anything that threatens to take them away. Even happiness. Especially happiness. There's a moment you might recognize. You're lying in bed at night, exhausted, knowing you should sleep, but instead you scroll, you think, you replay conversations from years ago. You reopen emotional doors that should have stayed closed. You make yourself feel worse. And yet, you don't stop. It's not that you can't. It's that something in you doesn't want to. Because there is a strange intimacy in suffering, a feeling of control, a sense that at least this pain is yours. Better the pain you know than the uncertainty you don't. This is where the idea becomes truly dangerous. It convinces you that your suffering is not just unavoidable, but necessary, even valuable. You begin to romanticize it. You see yourself as someone deep, complex, misunderstood. And maybe you are. But depth is not the same as damage, and complexity is not the same as self-destruction. Yet the line between them becomes blurred, and you begin to cross it without noticing. In relationships, this idea becomes even more insidious. You meet someone who treats you with genuine care. They are consistent, kind, present. There is no drama, no games, no chaos. And something inside you feels uncomfortable. Not because they are wrong, but because they are right. And right feels unfamiliar. So you begin to create problems, small at first. You overanalyze their words. You question their intentions. You test them, push them, withdraw. Not enough to end things, just enough to destabilize them. Because stability feels like losing control, and chaos feels like home. You tell yourself you're protecting your independence, your standards, your self-worth. But if you look deeper, there is another truth hiding beneath all of that. You are protecting your suffering. Because without it, you don't know who you are. Dostoevsky's underground man once said that even if you proved to him that happiness was the logical outcome, that 2 + 2 = 4, he would still reject it. Because 2 + 2 = 4 is not life, it is certainty. And certainty suffocates him. He needs the possibility of choosing against reason, against himself, because that is where he feels most human. And perhaps, so do you. There is a quiet rebellion in self-sabotage, a refusal to be predictable, a resistance against becoming just another person following the rules. But what if that rebellion is not freedom, but a different kind of prison? What if the idea you cling to, the one that tells you you're too complicated, too broken, too different to live simply, is the very thing keeping you trapped? You don't just fear failure, you fear success. Because success would require you to let go of the story you've built about yourself. And that story, no matter how painful, is familiar. It gives you structure. It explains your past. It justifies your present. And most importantly, it protects you from the unknown. Because if you were to step outside of it, even for a moment, you would have to face a terrifying possibility. That you are not as broken as you think. That your suffering is not inevitable. That your patterns are not destiny. And if that's true, then everything changes. And change is the one thing this idea will never allow. So it whispers again, softly, convincingly. Stay the same. Stay safe. Stay who you've always been. And you listen. Because listening feels easier than confronting it. But the cost is subtle. It doesn't destroy your life all at once. It erodes it, slowly, quietly, until one day You look around and realize that nothing has truly changed. The same habits, the same thoughts, the same emotional loops playing on repeat. Years have passed, but you are still standing in the same place. And the worst part is not the stagnation.
It's the realization that you were never truly stuck. You were choosing, over and over again. There's a moment that comes to almost everyone, a moment of clarity. It doesn't last long, just a flicker. You see your patterns clearly. You understand exactly what you're doing. And for a second, you feel something rare. Responsibility. Not blame, not shame. Just the quiet awareness that you are involved in your own suffering. And in that moment, you have a choice. You can step out of it, or you can retreat. Most people retreat, not because they are weak, but because stepping out feels like losing a part of themselves. It feels like betrayal, like abandoning an identity you've carried for years, even if that identity has been hurting you, especially if it has. Because pain, over time, becomes familiar, and familiarity becomes comfort, even when it shouldn't. So you return, back into the patterns, back into the loops, back into the quiet agreement you've made with yourself. I will not change too much. I will not risk too much. I will not become someone I don't recognize. And so you remain, not fully alive, not fully lost, just suspended between what you are and what you could be. This is the true danger of the idea. It doesn't kill you. It prevents you from living. It convinces you that your contradictions are fixed, that your inner conflict is permanent, that your self-sabotage is just part of your nature. But what if it's not? What if it's a habit, a pattern, a learned response that feels like identity because you've repeated it so many times? That possibility is both liberating and terrifying. Because if it's true, then you are not a victim of yourself. You are a participant. And participation means responsibility. Responsibility means choice. And choice means you can no longer hide behind the idea. You can no longer say, "This is just how I am." You would have to say something much more difficult. "This is what I've been choosing." And that sentence is almost unbearable, because it strips away every excuse, every justification, every comforting illusion. It leaves you alone with yourself. Not the version you've constructed, but the one underneath, the one who knows, the one who always knew, that you were capable of something else, something better, something quieter, something less dramatic, but more real. And that is where the final tension emerges, because now you stand at the edge of two paths. One is familiar, predictable, comfortably painful. The other is uncertain, unstable, quietly hopeful. But hope can feel more dangerous than despair, because despair asks nothing of you. Hope demands everything. It demands that you let go of the idea, that you release the identity built around your suffering, that you step into a version of yourself that feels foreign and maybe even false at first. Because change doesn't feel authentic, not in the beginning. It feels forced, awkward, like wearing someone else's life. And that discomfort becomes the final test. Will you interpret it as a sign that you're doing something wrong, or as proof that you're finally stepping outside the pattern? Most people choose the first. They retreat again, back into the familiar suffering, because at least there, they know who they are. And so the idea survives. It continues, quietly, patiently, waiting for the next moment of potential change, so it can pull you back. And maybe, as you listen to this, Something in you recognizes it, not as a theory, not as an abstract concept, but as a lived experience, a pattern you've felt, a choice you've made more than once, maybe many times. And maybe, for a moment, you feel that same flicker of clarity, that same uncomfortable awareness, the sense that you are standing at the edge again, between what you are and what you could be. So now the question returns, but it is no longer abstract. It is personal, precise, unavoidable.
If the thing destroying your life is also the thing you refuse to let go of, then what exactly are you protecting? And more importantly, why?